Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. This is Wendy. Today I'm doing my top 10 farmhouse Dollar Tree DIYs. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And if this is your first time here, welcome, and I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. And now, without further ado, let's get started. So for our first project, we're going to start with this To the Moon and Back woodish kind of sign from the Dollar Tree, this burlap lace ribbon, and then some lamb's ear. I'm kind of getting low on this, so this is just some leftovers that I put together, and you get this at Walmart for $2 a bunch. Some Waverly white chalk paint, as well as some ballet slipper pink chalk paint, some vinyl and transfer tape because we'll be using the cameo, a bistro chalk marker, some stir sticks, my glue gun and scissors, and a chenille stem. A chenille stem. Thank you guys for keeping me on my toes. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off all of the backing from the heart, and it comes up pretty easily if you do it nice and slowly, and it'll just kind of pop right up. You can also use a blow dryer to heat up the glue, another recommendation from my wonderful viewers. But this one didn't even need it. It just came up as long as I did it nice and slow. So once I got it off, I took my sanding block and then just made it all smooth and a nice surface so that I could paint it. So for the top part of the heart, I'm going to be using the ballet slipper just by itself in the full color, because what I want to do is gradually make the shades lighter as we go down the heart. So the next portion is going to be a little bit lighter than the top one, and then the third one even lighter than that, and so on. So the way I do that is I'm going to be adding a little bit of white each time for each section, and then that'll give it the ombre effect. So now that I have my sections all painted, I'm going to measure to determine how large I need to make my words that I'll be cutting from my Silhouette Cameo 3. And I'm going to put on each part, "For God" will be at the top, and then "So loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son," John 3:16. And so I sectioned it off and used different fonts for each of those sections. And I think this is really the best scripture that can be used during Valentine's Day, because there is no greater love. So the second part is going to say, so loved the world that he gave his. And this will give you an idea of the automatic settings that come up when you set it to matte vinyl. You guys have been asking to do a tutorial, and while I don't think I'm that great at it, I was going to try and go ahead and make a video to give you some tips and pointers of at least what I've learned over the past 3 months of doing this. So let me know if you guys are really up to that, if you would like to see a tutorial. I know there's way better people out there doing them on YouTube, but I would love to help if I can in any way. I absolutely love these fonts, and so I'm gonna put them in the description box in case you guys want to use these. But it's the Hand Snow is what I used for God and Only Begotten Son, and then the Skinny for So Loved the World that He Gave, and then for John 3:16 I used Lucida Grande. So, but I'll put those in the description box so you don't have to remember that right now. And you can download these fonts for free at dafont.com. I'll put that link in the description box as well. And you can use those for free for personal use. So Dollar Tree does carry white lace, but I had this stash where I put ribbons from, like in this case, pajamas, or if you have blankets or sheets. This was from a wedding, just leftover ribbon and lace. And so I put it all together in a box, and then I can use it for whatever I need. So I knew that I wanted to use lace to hold the pieces together to match my burlap and lace ribbon. So I just cut 2 pieces and lined them up along the sides, and I'm going to attach those. That's what will hold them together. So I was measuring to get them into the right position, and then I need to split them apart. And so in order to separate them evenly, I put popsicle sticks in between each of the planks so that they would be evenly spaced. Now when I first measured, I didn't quite get it right, so make sure you get it right. Just don't do what I did. So because this lace is so delicate, there's not a lot to really grab onto. So I've been getting a lot of questions about these finger protectors, and so I'll link the Amazon link to purchase these. They were like $2.97 for a set of 10, but they've gone up in price, so now they're a whole $3.33 or something. So they also have some at Dollar Tree. They're not like this. They don't have any of the ventilation holes, but they're still really good, and I use those as well. So as you can see, after I've put my spacers in, I'm going to lay that lace down and just kind of push it into place with into the hot glue, using a popsicle stick and my finger and just whatever to get it in place. And so I do that for both sides, and that's what's going to keep the little planks together. So now I'm going to make my bow for the top, and using this burlap and lace ribbon, I just did the fold over method. This is called the Olivia bow, for those of you who know Olivia's Romantic Home, and this is how she does it, and I know other people do it too, but you just want to cut some slits on the side, just very small slits that just go through the metal part or the wire, and then using a chenille stem, I put it through, kind of crunch it in the middle so that it's pulled together, and then fan out those loops and make it into a nice perky fluffy bow. So then I took the rest of the ribbon that was left on the spool and was going to make that into the hanging part. And I still did. I put it at the top. But I had decided I was loving this so much. I had originally just planned to make it like this, as it was intended originally when you purchase it from the Dollar Tree. But I loved it so much that I wanted to make it even more special and kind of center of attention. So I attached the bow to the top. And this, you can stop right there, and this is really cute as it is. And I kind of did the sensuous hanger, like sensuous back there. Go ahead and make a little hanger for it to hang up. And so I decided to go ahead and put it on this Walmart plank or pallet board or whatever you want to call it. They sell these at Walmart for $14.95. And I just wanted to add more to it just because I loved it so much, and I love the scripture, of course. And so I went ahead and got some more lamb's ear from Walmart and added that to the back part of the bow. And I just used hot glue, and I didn't have my finger protectors on, but I will get them on in just a second. And so I'm just twisting my leaves so that the top parts are showing for the most part. And then I just hot glue that down, and that's going to be behind my bow. And then if there's any empty spots, just add more of the lamb's ear. And then I was also calling this Queen Anne's lace, and this is not what this is. This is the baby breath. And thank you to my viewers who, again, keep me on my toes, because I don't want to give any wrong information. So that is important, and I appreciate it. So I found these feathers. This was actually from some Christmas ornament, and so I pulled those off. But Dollar Tree does have feathers as well in their craft section. So I added a couple of feathers just to give it some more softness, and hot glued those into the lamb's ear. And I found that the best way to use or to hot glue something this skinny is to just kind of hold it a little bit away from it and let the glue kind of just fall onto the stem. So now that I've got those all in place, I knew that I wanted to make a little cross for my heart. So I had this old fall swag thingy that was made out of twigs, and you could actually do this from branches in your backyard. But I liked them so much, I ended up putting some into the top piece, and they had kind of like almost little thorns or something sticking out, so it kind of reminded me of the crown of thorns. So I thought it was perfect for this piece. So now I just took some little twigs. I put 3 together and then wired those together and then put another 3 together to make the crossbeam, and then covered that wire with some jute twine to make a cross, and then I used the extra wire to attach it to that second plank and just wrapped it around, and it was in place. So now I'm going to add some pink to the garland, and I had these Dollar Tree flowers. I have a whole bunch of them, and I actually used them for centerpieces in my granddaughter Cadence's first birthday party centerpieces. And so I found those, and they were the perfect color. And they're a little worn out, but I think it looks perfect in this. And so I just added a couple, 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And then there were some super pink parts of the flower, and I just cut those off so that it wasn't so loud and it was softer. And then I raised the heart a little bit by shortening those 2 pieces of burlap that were holding them up originally. And so anyway, I think it turned out super cute. I put 2 of these little sawtooth holders on the back so that it can be hung, and I couldn't get it all the way in. It's very soft wood, but there was a knot or something in all 4 spots, so I'll have to have Michael J put those in better for me. So here it is all done, and I absolutely love this piece. I think this might be my favorite of all time. I love this scripture, and like I said, this is something that we should be celebrating at Valentine's Day, because there is no greater love than the love Jesus has for us and that God has for us. So anyway, not only that, I think it's really pretty too, and I think it's super soft and perfect for pink Valentine's Day. Project, we're going to be using one of these large Easter tags, and then again some more of the Waverly wax in antique. So for this project, I'm going to use the back of my tag, and I just cut off the jute twine holder at the top, and then using my foam brush, I did a layer of the wax, and I just used the flat surface of the foam brush to make sure that it was semi-flat, but I also wanted to give it some streaks so that it would resemble wood. Once I got to the finish I wanted, I continued by using some pretty heavy gauge wire, some jute twine, 5 pieces of those tumbling blocks, and then I purchased these beads. They're just under 1 inch, so they're 20 millimeters, and I got these, it's 200 pieces for $12.99. And I got those at Amazon, and so I'll put a link in the description box below. So this is the wire that gets my hands all dirty. For some reason, there's some kind of finish on it that is like greasy or something. So I didn't want to get my hands dirty, so I put some gloves on. But I want to make this a kind of like the hanger, but it's going to be a beaded garland. So I want the sides to be uneven, so I made one longer than the other. And then I started threading my beads on, and I did one side first and then threaded the wire through the hole at the top of the tag and then threaded more beads on the other side. Then I wanted to crisscross them, and so I just wrapped around about the area that I wanted so that they would intersect, and since they're on wire, they'll stay in place. So now I'm going to make my tassels, and it's a variation of a tassel. I'm using that linen ribbon from burlapfabric.com, and I just cut a few pieces about 6 inches long and folded them in half. Then I'm going to wrap it around the wire and then take my needle nose pliers and make that wire feed back up into that first bead so that it stays in place. And then I'm going to take a piece of jute twine and wrap it around about 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the top of the ribbon to make it resemble a tassel. Then I decided I was going to use my Silhouette Cameo 3 to cut out the word faith. So I first measured my tag to see how large I needed to make the word, and it came out to 5.5 inches by 3 inches. And so I used a ivory color of vinyl and cut that word out, and then weeded it, put my transfer tape on top, and then applied it to the top part of my tag. Now I'm going to take my tumbling blocks, and I started with the very center piece to make sure it was in the middle and at the right area so that the rest of them would line up perfectly. And I'm just going to make a cross to go right below the word faith. Once I knew everything was in place and in the right spot, I hot glued my beaded garland to the top of the tag so it wouldn't move. And here it is, all done. I'm absolutely in love with this. I love the scalloped edge of this tag, which is a little bit different than some of the others I've seen. But I absolutely love how the wood tone of the cross and the natural wood tone of the beads matches. And along with that ivory color of vinyl, I just love this piece. I hope you guys like it too. Using 4 of these 8x8 picture frames that have little messages inside of them, and then the windmill wind chime that you see in the garden area, and then the rest of that rug underlay, and then a little piece of some burlap ribbon. And then I'm going to be using my Silhouette Cameo 3, so I'm using some black vinyl from Frisco Craft, and I'll have them linked as well. And then some Waverly chalk paint in ink, and then also in elephant, and then our wax that's in antique. And then a sanding block. I think I used just regular sandpaper, but our glue gun and scissors. And so the first thing we're going to do is deconstruct our little windmill to get the windmill itself off of the wind chime. So there's a little tabby on the top, and if you just keep moving it back and forth, it'll eventually come off. And then you have to kind of squeeze together the little pole or the stick that goes through the round part of the bottom triangle. So once you get that squeezed together, it pops right out. And then we're going to use just the glasses and not the cardboard from these frames. And there's little styrofoam pieces or foam pieces that kind of are used as a lifter between the glass and the message. So we're going to take those out. And you always have to be really careful with these frames because they're not really wood and they're not even press board. They're almost like a styrofoam or some kind of foam. So you have to move those little tabbies very easily and carefully so that they don't break off. So now I'm just going to take my white chalk paint and paint the entire frames. And because they're dark underneath, I don't have to have a perfectly solid coverage. So it kind of makes it automatically distressed if you see some of those streaks of the dark underneath it showing through. So now I'm going to take my windmill and my ink chalk paint and paint all of the blades and the circle part of the rim. And I don't want this to be perfectly solid either, so I'm going to go back in with my sandpaper and sand the edges and let some of that blue show through, but mostly that galvanized look that's underneath. So I'm also going to paint the back side in case you can see any of the back showing through. I don't think it will show, but just to kind of finish it up. I don't know why. I like to paint the backs of things. So now I'm going to take some elephant chalk paint and I'm going to take a paintbrush and just dab all over my underlay. And this is kind of a rubbery material, and so it's really easy to work with, as you saw before, but I want to make it look a little bit galvanized, a little bit rustic, so that it kind of resembles a type of chicken wire or something. So this is my version of square chicken wire. And then I'll also dab in some of the wax in antique. So now I'm going to take my sandpaper, and now that my frames are dry, I'm going to sand the edges and get that all nicely distressed. It looks on video like these frames are black, but they're not. They're more of a really, really dark brown. So I love that I'm able to sand these so easily, and that shows through and looks really rustic and pretty. So now I'm going to take that round centerpiece and fold the little tabby under the bottom of it, and then I'll hot glue that to the top of the windmill to finish it off. And then I'm going to cut out my HME from my Silhouette Cameo, and I'll have the font listed in the description box below. And then I just cut those letters out, and then I'm going to place those onto the glass once we get them put together. Whenever I have leftover vinyl, I always cut them in squares so that they're usable again, and then I put them in a bin under my workstation. So now I'm going to pull off the top layer of vinyl, and these were super easy to weed because there was really no weeding to them. And then I'm going to put my transfer paper on top of those, and I'm actually going to use one piece of transfer tape for all three of the letters. And I get my transfer tape from the Dollar Tree, and it's actually shelf paper, and it's in the dish aisle with all the dishes and glassware. And so it's with the shelf paper. So a lot of people have asked me about that, so that you can find it. Now you'll know where to look once you can go shopping again. So now I'm going to set these letters aside, and then we're going to put our frames together. So the first thing I did with that is put my glass into the frame, and then I'm going to use some window cleaner to clean those off and make sure there's no lint or anything. And then I'm going to cut out a piece of my chicken wire, and then I'm going to glue that around the edges of the frame. And it's always so much easier to work with materials that have a grid of some sort, like buffalo check, because you can always cut in a straight line and you don't get all crookedy. So then I just pulled the tabbies over so that by taking them out, I risked cracking my frame, and I didn't want to do that. So I just pushed them over to the side of the frames, and then I hot glued my chicken wire into the inside area of the frame. And then I used a popsicle stick to push down onto that glue to make sure it got nice and adhered to the, well, it's rubber, but you know, it's our chicken wire. And so after I got that all secured, I'll attach my vinyl letters to each of the frames on top of the glass. So now I'm going to take my windmill and attach it to my frame, and there's two spots where it actually hits, and I put some hot glue right under those blades and attach it, and it's really secure because the little windmill is pretty light anyway. And you do want to make sure that you get all of your little glue strings off of your glass, and if you have trouble grabbing some, you can always use tweezers to get them out of there. So then I'm going to turn it over and put my chicken wire into that one. And I ran out, so I didn't have any more full sheets, but I knew that was going to happen, so I had planned ahead. And there's a spot right in the middle of the windmill where it goes completely across. And so I just pieced it right in the middle there, and you can't even tell that it's pieced together. So now I'm going to take some of my burlap ribbon and cut it down to the size that I need, and then I'm going to cut it long ways so that it's more narrow and fits between the two sides of the frame, and that's what's going to hold these frames together. So when I glue it down, I want to make sure that first of all the little sawtooth hanger is at the top so that you'll always have the option of hanging this as well as setting this on a countertop. But I also want my letters to kind of accordion style fold, if that makes sense. This way they can move around a little bit, and the burlap ribbon is working as a hinge, so to speak. And if you've ever bought frames from Dollar Tree in multiples, you probably know they're never quite the same size. So you just want to make sure that the bottom line is perfectly even, because that's going to be sitting on a countertop, whereas the top doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. And here's how this one turned out, and you see what I meant by the accordion style. So I think it's so cutie patootie, and I did get a couple of air bubbles underneath my vinyl letters, but I don't know what happened. I think I wasn't paying attention or something. But I love how rustic and farmhouse looking this is. I will have these letters available in my Etsy shop, and that's White Sparrow Living. So if you want to make this, or you need the letters for another project, just go to my Etsy shop and you will find things there that might help you in your crafting. But I hope you guys like these cylinder glass vases, and these come in 7.5 inches and 9 inches. They don't always have them at the same time, but every now and then they do. So also some Waverly Wax Antique and some Waverly White Chalk Paint, some painter's tape, some tumbling tower blocks, and you can get these that have half of the box already stained, which would make it a lot easier. But these I got from another Michelle Meacham, a sweet viewer who sent these to me. So thank you again, Michelle. Anyway, what we're going to do is tape off the bottom portion of our vases, and I just eyeballed it and went about 1/3 of the way down, and then using my painter's tape I just made a circle all the way around, and then I'm going to use my Waverly White Chalk Paint to paint that bottom portion. So now I'm going to make my stands, and there are literally 11 different ways to make this. And I saw my friend Kat at According to Kat make one in a recent DIY video, and I'll link her video down below. And so, but the way I did it is I took my miter saw and cut off 1/4 of an inch on 4 of the blocks, and then that way I could get a perfect cross. So I put 2 of the regular length ones end to end, and then the 2 shorter ones on the sides. So to put these together, again, I've seen it done a lot of different ways. So I tried all of them, and first of all, I started with my hot glue, and that didn't work so well. And then I used some super glue, and again, that didn't work too well. It probably would if you left it overnight, but it just wasn't getting a good grip, so I don't know if it would have stayed even if I did wait that long. But then I tried the super glue that's in a gel form from Dollar Tree, and then I coupled that with some hot glue, and that finally worked for me. If I was leaving it overnight, again, the gel would have probably worked by itself, but I didn't have that kind of time, so I used both the hot glue and the super glue gel. So once I got my crosses together and scraped off the hot glue that had seeped out with my utility knife, then I took a regular length one and put it about 1/4 of the way up on all 4 crossbars. Now I'm going to take my antique wax and paint the entire piece, and I painted all of the top and all of the bottom, and I was real careful to make sure I got in the little nooks and crannies of the corners and just everywhere. So here's how they turned out. I was going to leave them empty, but I happened to have these in a couple of sconces that I had, and they were the exact same circumference, so they fit right in there. But you could totally DIY this yourself and just use some burlap and some floral foam and fit it to the inside and let it kind of set up there. And there's some jute twine wrapped around it as well. So I love how they turned out. I love that dark wood against the white, and again, super modern farmhouse and really a pretty display, I think. And so I'm going to show you what everything looks like all together in just a second. Using some more of that jute webbing, some of the baby's breath from Walmart, a couple of the cotton buds, some of the linen striped ribbon, and a chenille stem, some chain, and some ornament hangers. And the first thing I'm going to do is take some of that webbing and roll it into the shape of a cone. So it'll kind of have a point at the top. And once I get the right shape and size, I'm going to cut it off, and that'll kind of be my template for the rest of my cones. So I'm going to wrap it around and then take my hot glue and go down the seam and put it together. And I'm going to be doing a total of 7 of these. So I cut out 7 pieces so that I could put them together. Then I'm going to take another piece of my chain, and so what I'm doing is taking 2 of these and putting them together. And so all I did was used one of those clips to attach those, and then I put my cones together, and I want to make sure that there's a real small hole at the bottom. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I just want to make sure that there's enough room to get another hook down below so that I can attach both the tops and the bottoms of the cone to the chain. That'll make sense in a second. So this webbing is really pretty thick, and so I just used my needle and tapped it into the fabric so that I could make a hole. So I kind of mushed it around so that it would kind of get bigger. And then I took my Christmas ornament hook and stuck it through. And then I'm going to get my chain and attach my cone to the 4th link down. And I just did the top, and then I attached the bottom, and I'll show you how I put the hook through the bottom in just a second as well. And then I'm going to count down another 4 links, and that's where my next hook is going to go. And when I stuck my hook through, I wrapped it around to the next link so that it was attached really well and didn't move. So to make that bottom hook work, I made a little circle and then made the bottom part of the wire stick straight down. So that way when I fed it through the hole of the bottom of the cone, it stayed in place and I just had one piece sticking out. And then that's what I'm going to use to wrap around the link at the bottom of the cone. And then to keep them nice and secure together, I just hot glued them where they met. And then to put the baby's breath in and to make sure everything was in the right spot, I hung it on the back of the door so I could work with it from that angle. So for the bottom, I'm going to make a kind of a tassel out of this ribbon. And so I just cut 2 strips and then put those together and put a piece of jute twine through the middle of it. And then tied that in a knot, and then put another piece of jute twine around about a quarter of the way down so it would be in the spot where a tassel would have it. And then I attached that to the bottom of the chain. And then I'm going to make a sweet little bow for the top of the chain and put that right under the hook, and it should be done. And here it is all finished, and guess what? I'm super in love with this too. And so I put a little cotton bud in the first, and then in the middle, and then in the last cone. But I think this is super unique and so farmhouse and so pretty. I am absolutely in love with this. It's in a corner, so this is a perfect piece for a small wall, a narrow wall, but this was in a corner, so the lighting is a little bit dark, but I think you guys get the idea. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like with some other colors that coordinate with it, as well as the final vignette for the yellow spring vignette. This 3D wreath form that I got. It's supposed to be in the form of a ball, but we're going to use it a little bit differently. These can be found where the wreath forms are that you usually see. We're going to use some of this greenery that I got from Walmart for $3, and it's in the same area as the lamb's ear. Some Dollar Tree roses, and then some ferns that they also had. I'm really loving the looks of their greenery this year. A gold painter's pen. You could also use gold spray paint. That'd probably be easier, but this was all I had. Some green floral paddle wire to attach our greenery to our wreath form. And the first thing I'm going to do is take these rings apart, and it's basically the same thing as a wire wreath form, but they're just not attached with the crossbars. So I need to make these gold in order to match the decor that I'm making for my daughter's baby shower. So I didn't have any gold spray paint, so instead I just used my gold paint pen. Now these little bars are meant to attach the rings together, and then you separate them out and make them into a ball. But I wanted to give it a different look and kind of make it look like this, where you may have seen a logo or a scripture, and this is the outline. So I just attached them where they were different sizes, went in a different order so that they weren't just perfectly in sequence. So after I got those in the order that I wanted, I took some zip ties and attached it at the top and bottom where those bars are, and then cut off the excess. And then this is going to be covered with our foliage, so it's not going to show. So I'm going to start with the ferns as the base of our greenery, and I just split them in half using the same stem, and then had 3 on one side and 3 on the other. And then using my green floral wire, I'm just going to wrap it around and run in and out through those leaves. And you don't see the greenery, and it's going to get covered even more, but I just want to make sure that it's securely attached to the rings of the wreath. So then after I add the ferns, I'm going to add some more greenery and then ultimately some roses toward the top. And like I said before, this is for my daughter's baby shower. We're actually calling it a baby sprinkle because it's not supposed to be as big as a shower, so it's just a sprinkle. But we are wanting to celebrate this baby because over the last year she's had 2 miscarriages, and so we have 2 little babies in heaven right now. So we really wanted to celebrate this rainbow baby, and we found out it's a little boy and his name will be Connor Brent. So she's not allowed to watch this video until after her baby shower. But I had noticed that in our prayer post there were a few people who have also unfortunately suffered the loss of their unborn baby, and so I just really wanted to give you my prayers and understanding, and we absolutely feel for you, and my daughter is praying for you as well. And also I know that it's pretty common these days. For some reason there have been so many losses of babies through miscarriage, and not only in people that I have heard it happen to, and even in my family, but we just wanted you guys to know that it's not something that you should forget about and just move on. You need to name those babies and remember them always and know that you're going to meet them again. So after I attached all of the bottom roses and put them in a little cluster, I'm going to cover that top bar with another couple of leaves from, I think it's called Dusty Miller, the leaves from Walmart, and then just a single rose. And some of the plastic stuff on the back, the green stuff, it kind of sticks out a little too much, so I just cut those off and then hot glued that to cover the bar and to just give it a little bit of balance, and then it's done. And here it is, all finished, and I am absolutely in love with this. The theme that we're doing for the baby shower is kind of a boho-ish, modern farmhouse look, but this can be used for a bridal shower or even a wedding, and it can be left in your home year-round. It's not seasonal, so I just love it, and I hope you guys like it. Baskets, a metal pie pan, a container. This is a plastic or acrylic container, and we're just going to be using the lid, and then a candle holder, one of these little glitter birds. They come in a pack of 2, and I had this one left over from Valentine's Day. And then this is the lavender that they have at Dollar Tree, but I just didn't have enough, so I happen to have this, which is a little softer and prettier, from Walmart. And then some black elephant and white chalk paint. and then our glue gun, scissors, some E6000 and wire cutters. And actually I just got some new Gorilla Glue that's the same thing as E6000, so I'm going to try that out for the first time. So the first thing we're going to do is get our items ready to be painted. So I first took the chains off of the hanging basket, and then we'll be painting the basket, the pie plate or the pie tin, and then the lid of the acrylic canister. So I just dumped some white Waverly chalk paint into the pan and then just moved that around. We don't need a complete coverage because I'm going to go back in with all of these items and add some light gray to it so that it kind of gives it a galvanized look, but not very dark. I'm looking for a real light rustic finish for this. But because each of these items had a completely different finish, I wanted to start out with a white base so that when I did my paint treatment, that they would all look pretty much the same. We're also going to be painting our little birdie, and I just used the white paint, and when you go over the glitter, it kind of just gives it a concrete look just because of the texture of it. So I took off his little wings and made him all completely white, and with the red it kind of would pop through even after you had painted it, so I went back in and just made sure that he was pure white. So now in order to make the light gray paint, I'm just going to add a little bit of the elephant to my white chalk paint. And then it wasn't exactly the shade that I wanted, so I went back in with some black and just added a tiny little bit and then mixed that up with my craft stick. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of water on the side because I didn't want anything solid. I wanted it to be kind of see-through and translucent so that it looked like a little bit of a galvanized look. So I just went through all of the different items with my paintbrush and just mixed it around until I got the look that I wanted. If I got too much paint on there, I would just take a paper towel and kind of blotch it off and pull some of that off. And then again, if your paint gets a little too thick, you can just add a little teeny bit of water and mix it around, and then you get more of a smooth finish as opposed to real blotchy. Now I'm going to take my basket and I'm using pliers to take the hooks where the chain would have hung from, and I'm going to pull those down, and when you do, it'll kind of snap and lose a weld, and it still stays on there and it's still held on by the other side, but that's what's going to keep our basket from going over the pie pan. Then to get the top onto the basket, I just took that acrylic lid and went all the way around the edge of it with my Gorilla Glue, and I couldn't figure out how to do it just where it was going to hold on the crossbars, so I went ahead and just did it all the way around to save time. And then I'm going to flip it over, and then using my hot glue gun, I'm going to add big dollops of glue over the wire so that it adheres to the lid. Then I'm going to make a nest, and I took a plastic lid and put some hot glue on it, and then took some Excelsior. You could use moss from Dollar Tree. This is just what I had on hand. And I attached that and made it kind of circular into the shape of a nest, and then just pushed it down and covered the outside rim with more hot glue. And then I'll set that aside. Now I'm going to take my lavender and just cut those off. And I forgot to tell you, these were 97 cents at Walmart. And I'm just going to overlap them and hot glue along the way. And I want some of it peeking out of the cage part or the basket. So I want it to overlap the edges a little bit, but still be able to put the lid with the hooks underneath so that it stays on top of the pie tin. So I just went around with my hot glue, and then I'm going to place my nest in between all of that. And it wasn't quite tall enough, so I used a spool, an empty spool, ribbon spool, and put that down, and then put my nest on top of that. I want to use this again for different seasons and maybe change out what's inside. So I didn't hot glue the ribbon spool or the nest to the tin so that I can take that out and change it if I want to. So now that the bird was completely dry and completely white, I reattached his wings to him using hot glue. And then the parts where I could see some hot glue under the lid, I decided to cover with some jute twine just so you couldn't see it. It wasn't that noticeable, but if you have it on a coffee table or something and it's at eye level, you probably would be able to see it. So I just took my jute twine and wrapped it around a few times and then hot glued it underneath. And then I'm going to take our pretty little bird and put him in his home, and then taking some Gorilla Glue, I'm going to go all the way around the rim of the candle holder for a permanent and really stable hold, and then I'll just use some hot glue to have an immediate hold, and then just take the whole pie plate and stick it right in the middle and make sure that it's centered by checking all the way around. And then I took another piece of jute twine to kind of go with the top portion and wrapped it around the bottom and just tied it in a sweet little bow. And here it is, all done. I absolutely am in love with this. It turned out better than I even had in my brain, so I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would love if you would give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, I would appreciate if you hit that big red subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. So I hope everybody has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye. Project, I'm going to be using this hanging basket, not the basket part, but just the chains and the hooks, and then a cake pan, a metal hanging plant bracket, and then a plastic plate that comes in a package, a chinette plate, and then a round mirror. And then this is a Bean Boozled spinner thingy, so if you have a game that has a spinner, you can use that for your scale. And then a large nail, a piece of wood, some E6000 Mod Podge, and a sponge brush. And then this printout of a scale face, and then some Waverly White chalk paint and some black paint, and you can use acrylic. I actually used chalk paint as well. And then some hot glue, your scissors, and your wire cutters. And so the first thing I did was painted my cake pan in the white. I like to pour the paint into or onto whatever surface I'm painting, but in this case I got a little bit too much, a little too carried away, so I was painting and pulling it off and putting it back into the jar. But I just gave this 2 coats and made it pure white. I was going to do the galvanized treatment, but decided to go with the enamelware look, so I'm just going to paint it completely white and then go back with my black chalk paint and do the edges and make a few of those little chips that you see in authentic enamelware. But I'll do that after it's completely dry. So now I'm going to get the face of my scale done, and I just popped out the back, and I'm going to twist the little hanger upside down and then put it back in backwards into the frame. And then I'm going to take my black chalk paint and paint in the entire mirror and the cardboard surrounding it, because I'm going to put my paper, which is the printout of the scale, on top of that. And this way it has a nice flat surface to glue down onto. So after I get that painted, I'm going to print out from my so-called DIY blog, and I'll have this in the description box below so that you can print out that scale on your own home computer. And I just did it on regular copy paper and printed it out, and then I'm going to cut it out and use Mod Podge to adhere it to the painted mirror. This is a really good DIY blog. Her name's Emily, the writer of this, and so she's got a lot of good ideas on there, so you may want to check that out anyway. And so now, just because this is a brand new piece of paper, I wanted to make it look a little older, so I just took my fan brush and used my black chalk paint to give it some lines and some aged looking distressing. And then I'm going to take my Mod Podge and then paint it onto my mirror and then place that paper right on top of that. And when you're positioning the paper onto the mirror, you want to make sure that the very bottom is in the same position as the little picture hanger on the back that we turned around, because that's going to be serving as the part that's going to hold our hook once we get our scale put together. So if this were a clock, it would be in the 6 o'clock position. So now I'm going to take my plate and kind of look at where it's positioned on the outside so that I can take my E6000. And this is actually the black type, which worked perfectly. I bought this on accident, not realizing it was black, but it sure has come in handy for a number of projects. So I'm just going to take one small bead and go all the way around the face of the scale and then place my plastic plate over that, and hopefully it will get a good adhesion and fall into that E6000. So now I'm going to take my little spinner and hot glue that to the outside. You could, because there is enough room, place that underneath so that the entire spinning mechanism will be underneath that plastic part. But because the plastic plate says Chinette, I wanted to cover that up. So now I'm going to take the planter itself and mark where the 3 holders would be so that I get a flat and even hanging scale. So I'm going to take my big fat nail and hammer that into those 3 places to make holes, and I just placed a piece of scrap wood underneath it so I didn't hurt my work surface. So once I got my holes made, I'm going to take the large hook from the chain and I'm going to turn it upside down and feed it through the hanging part of the mirror and close up that small hook and then leave the big hook hanging down. And now I'm going to do my enamelware treatment using my black chalk paint and a sponge brush, and I'm just going to go around the edges and give it kind of a rough finish so that it's not perfect. And then chances are I'm going to mess up, and so when I do that, I use that as one of the areas that I'll do that chippy look that you see on enamelware. And then once I get all the edges done and any chip marks that I want to make there, I'm going to go back in and do some random chip marks on the rest of the cake pan. So now I'm going to make the top part that's going to actually hang on our bracket, and I just take my pliers and open up the link of the hook and take one of the chains off. There's normally 3, but I've used one in something else. And so I'm going to make it the length that I want to have at the top. And you can adjust this according to wherever you're going to hang it so that it can be longer or shorter. But I'm just going to open that final link up and make it into a hook so that that can be stuck inside the frame in between the cardboard and the plastic frame itself. And then I'm going to get it exactly in line with that bottom hook, and then I'm going to take my E6000 and some hot glue and get that to stay in place. And then I'm going to take the little clips and feed each one of those into the holes and then pull them all together and determine how tall I want that to be or how long I want it to hang, and then take off the links in order to get it to the proper height that I want. And so to do that, I just open the links and then take them apart, and then I'm going to have one link holding those 3 together, if that makes sense. And I'm going to show you all 3 of these pieces together in a vignette at the end of this video. And here's how it turned out, and I think it is so adorable and very farmhouse. It cost a total of $4, including the bracket that it's hanging on, but it's really lightweight, and I just stuck some lamb's ear inside of the little cake pan. And I have this on my shiplap wall, so I didn't want to put any nails in there to show you guys, but I just used a command hook, so I had to work fast because I knew that wasn't going to hold up for very long, but I didn't want to ruin my shiplap either. So I think it turned out so cutie patootie. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, but I hope you guys like this. Two of these metal cooling racks, some cable ties, and they have the long ones and the short ones, but I couldn't find the package for the short ones. 5 of these mini little terracotta pots, some random foam and some larger foam, and some more scrap greenery. I always stock up whenever I find this at Dollar Tree. And then some jute twine, some white and black chalk paint, and then some more of the wax in antique. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this was a dumb idea. I didn't have any black spray paint, but I should have waited to do this project, but I really wanted to get this done. And so I took my chalk paint and painted this by hand. I do not recommend this. This was no bueno. This is a job that needed to be spray painted. So if you have black spray paint, that would be the time to use it, regardless of the smell. So now I'm going to take my terracotta pots and I'm just going to paint those white. And I love painting terracotta for some reason because it goes on so smooth and pretty, and it dries almost instantly because I think the terracotta kind of sucks in the moisture. But I'm just going to paint all 5 of my pots. And then I'm going to take my Waverly wax in antique and I'm going to make a little line at the bottom of the pots because I want a little wood looking rim at the bottom. So originally I used a pencil to mark where I wanted to make that rim, and then on the second try I didn't even use a pencil mark. It was just such a small area and I was able to just drag my brush all the way around. Every time I would put my bristles down though, it would make a line. So what I ended up doing was just making sure that where I started and finished was one long consecutive line and that it would finish in the back. So the line itself would be only in the back. So now I'm going to take the small scraps of floral foam and hot glue those to the bottom of the pots just to give it some height. And then I'm going to take some jute twine and put a dot of glue in the back, and I find the back by looking for that line from the paint at the bottom rim. And then I'm going to wrap it around the top part of the planter and go around about 3 or 4 times and then tie it in a knot at the back, because that's what we're going to use to tie it to our thingy-majig. So to put our thingy-majig together, we're going to take the 2 cooling racks and attach them at the top using cable ties. And you want to make sure that the little feet of the cooling racks are both facing inside, so there won't be any lumps on the outside. So I just fed those through the top part of the racks and tied those and pulled them tight. And then I'm going to cut off the excess, and I want to make sure that they are the same distance apart on both sides. And then I went back in with my black paint and touched that up. And so now I'm going to use a piece from a trellis that I used in a different DIY, and I just took the pieces that were in the middle because they were about the right size, and using my shears I cut those apart and then made little hooks at each of the ends with my needle nose pliers. And then I'm going to place those on each of the sides to keep the rack from spreading open. So now I'm going to tie my little pots to the rack, and I just tied a knot and cut off the excess. And since I only had 5, I just staggered them up and down, and I think it was the perfect amount of pots anyway, so I had used one of them in a different DIY. So instead of using moss for this one, I decided to use some more floral foam, and I cut those all out in the shape of a circle and whittled it down to get to the right size. And I had seen this on Liz Fenwick's channel, and I'm sure everybody knows who Liz Fenwick is, but she had made it look like dirt one time when she was potting a fake plant. And so she took her floral foam and painted it black and then stuck it in the pot and then put the plants inside of that. And it really does look like dirt. So I highly recommend her channel. You will love her. I'll have her channel linked down below as well. And here's how this one turned out. I think this might be my favorite. I absolutely love it. Let me know which one is your favorite. But when you put all of these together in one vignette, it's so pretty with all the woods and coordinating white and greenery. And so you wouldn't put them all together in one display, but putting them in random places throughout can really make the difference in your home decor. But I really love this, and I hope you guys like it too. Final project, we're going to be using 2 of these cake pans, a large tin stove cover, the chain from a hanging wire basket. You can get that separately, but why not get the basket also? An assortment of random greenery, a utility knife with a really sharp blade, and I wasn't sure what tools I would need to do this project, but in the end I end up only using the ruler, the scissors, and those ugly big tin snips. So the first thing I did was found the center, or close to it, of the stove cover so that I could cut it in half. And I did that by using my utility knife and just scoring it a number of times and then folding it in half. I had to cut the 2 sides where the seam was, or the end of it, because there's more metal that's kind of wrapped around at the end. So I cut that and then folded it in half and then cut it again until finally it came apart. So then I took my cake pan and put it right in the middle of my stove cover and took a Sharpie and drew a line around the edges so I could see where the outside rim of my cake pan was. So then I took my tin snips and went all the way around the ledge part of the stove cover and then made little slits all the way around. And then for the parts that went beyond the corner or the rim of the stove cover, I used my scissors to make those notches meet up with the pink Sharpie. And then I folded those tabs over the rim of the cake pan. So once I got the bottom portion to the shape that I wanted and it fit perfectly to the cake pan, I wanted to get rid of the sharp edge that was at the top part. So I just took my pliers and rolled that metal over, and that left it with a blunt edge that was a lot safer. Then I put those pieces back together and pushed the flaps over so I could see where I needed to trim those off so that they would lay flat once I closed them up. So I just pulled those tabs open and used my scissors again and cut off probably an 1/8 to 1/2 of an inch. And then that way when I closed it back up again, they stayed securely in place. I had planned to use my Gorilla Glue to keep these together, but it turns out that once I pushed those tabs down, it got snug and tight and didn't even move. There were a couple of areas where there was a little piece pointing out, and so I just took my hammer and opened the tabs and then pushed them back in and then tapped on it so that those little points would go away. And then once I had it as smooth as possible, I went in with my hammer and tapped all those tabs down so that they were 100% secure and it was not moving. So then I just did the same exact thing with the second one, except this time I made the tabs a little bit closer together so I didn't have the problem of any of those pointy bits sticking up. So it was a lot smoother, and the top part was smoother, and it took less time and was even better than the first one. So one of my sweet viewers had recommended that anytime I am painting over a shiny, smooth surface like plastic or metal, that if you use some matte finish Mod Podge first before applying the paint, it will stick a lot better. You just have to wait for it to completely dry. So I did that and it worked really well. I didn't paint the cake pans themselves because they have a more porous surface, so it takes the paint pretty well. So I'm just starting with the bottom portion around the edges. I'm going to be covering the lip there, so that's not going to show, but just the parts where I pushed those tabs over, I didn't want any of those colors showing through. So all I did was added my mineral and my elephant chalk paint together and let those blend in, and every now and then I would add some white. I wanted this to be a galvanized look, but I wanted a lighter kind of galvanized metal. So I just played with it for a while and mixed it in, and then towards the end I took some black, very little black, and just kind of pounced around on that as well. I've had a lot of questions about my paint brushes and where I've gotten them, and so these particular ones with the white handles, those I got at Walmart, and they came in a pack of about 15 or 20, I think, and it comes with a little canvas pouch as well, and those were $19.99. This was a few years ago, and I actually bought these for my daughter, but these are really good brushes, and I do think that it's important to have good quality brushes. So after I got the look that I wanted, I went back in with my black and then blended that in. And then I decided to make the inside a little bit darker using the black. And I never cleaned my brush. I just kept using the same brush, but just with all the different colors on there. So at the edges, I did a black kind of outline just to give it a shadowed, weathered look. And then on the inside, I gave it some more shadow using darker colors and mostly black, but still gave it the pouncing method so that it would look like a galvanized metal of some sort. So then to cover the outside rim, I took some more of that 1-inch ribbon, but this time it's in black and white instead of the tan and white. And I just used my hot glue and wrapped that all the way around the perimeter of the cake pans. And you want to pull this pretty tight because there is a slight taper to the sides of the pans, but not enough to make it buckle in any way. So there's enough give in the fabric to make it go around tightly. So now I'm going to make hangers out of the chain from those wire baskets. And I just took my pliers and pulled off one of the links, bent it enough so that it could come out of the hook that was holding onto it. And then I took the little clips off at the other end and closed up the links with the pliers as well. And then I took those links and placed it where I wanted on the back of that lip of the pan, and then just used my hot glue and went over it so that it would seep under and held it in place. So once that hot glue was completely dry, I took some floral foam and stuck it into the little pocket. And then I'm going to take some greens and tuck those into the floral foam. I'm really liking Dollar Tree's assortment of greens, and even though they were really pretty, some of the leaves were just a little bit too big, so I ended up pulling those out because it was just covering all of the galvanized work that we just did. And so I decided instead just to do a little bit tucked over into the left side and in the corner. And I took some taller ones and put those in the back, and then I ended up taking some more of the white sunflowers, just 2 in each one. And just a little tip, if you twist the flowers, if they're all just over each other, you can twist them and make them a little fuller. So I did that and then tucked those in with the green foliage. And then I'm going to make a bow for the side as well. So I just took a piece of that ribbon and did that same crisscross method, and then used a chenille stem to pull it together in the middle. And then I cut off another little piece, folded it in thirds, and then wrapped it around to hide the chenille stem. And then I just took some hot glue and attached that right under all of the greenery and pretties. And then I cut the tails off at an angle, and it was done. And here they are, all finished, and I think these turned out super cute. They're not perfect, but it's supposed to be worn, and galvanized metal is never perfect, but I think they are adorable. I think they're very, very farmhouse. They also have that touch of spring. I honestly think that if you put this ribbon on anything, no matter what it looks like, that it will make it 100% more beautiful. So tell me what you guys think. I really hope you like these. I'm going to show you what it looks like with all of the projects we did today in one pretty vignette. And I'm also going to link all of the products that I used from burlapfabric.com in the description box below. So they have really, really good prices, you guys. So if you do see something you like, you really should treat yourself to a little bit of extra pretty and check them out online. I really hope you guys enjoyed these projects, and if you did, please give this a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think, share, and if you're not already, please consider subscribing so we can grow this channel. I appreciate everybody who is a loyal family member in our crafting community, and as always, I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye.